Hi, and welcome to our program From Embryo to Chick. My name is Jeannette and I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Livestock Conservancy, a national nonprofit dedicated to the conservation of rare livestock and poultry breeds. Today's topic is our final chick check-in, where we will see how the newly hatched chicks are doing and how to prepare for them growing into adults and moving into the coop. So let's see how the gang is doing. Our group of chicks is now over a week old, and they're growing in leaps and bounds, as you can see. The wing feathers are starting to come in, and the older ones have more than doubled in size. They are soon going to grow out of this brooder and will transition into an even bigger one with plenty of room for them to grow. In the meantime, we will get ready for them approaching adult size and making the move to the coop. Let's discuss some of the basics they will need in their new home. Once your birds are fully feathered, they are ready to make the leap from the brooder to the coop. And like the brooder, the coops come in all shapes and sizes. Some are mobile, some are stationary, and depending on how much space you have on your property, a mobile coop, if you've got a small space, might not be the most practical. And if you have a lot of space and you're looking to have a big mobile coop, ask yourself, can you move it by yourself, or do you need several people? This coop in the upper left, for instance, had a bit of husbandry problems because it would take several people to move that coop, and there weren't always that many hands available to move it, so this coop would stay stationary for longer periods of time, and they ended up having some health issues like mites on the chickens because the coop wasn't moving as often as it should have. So make sure that you've got a plan in place to be able to move your coops as often as you need to keep your birds healthy. Like the brooder, you want to have those coops clean. Every time you have a dirty coop, you're going to run into health problems eventually. So make sure it's easy to service. And also to keep dry. Having wet substrate or wet bedding is just a problem waiting to happen. So make sure it's clean, it's dry, and that way you're going to avoid any issues with health or parasites. And the other thing is make sure the birds have a dust bath area. This is a dust bath that we have at our place on the bottom left, where it's just an old culvert pipe that we've filled with a mixture of sand and ash, and the birds leap into there and roll around, and dust bathing is a really important way for birds to keep their feathers in good condition and also to ward off parasites like mites and lice that might get under the feathers. Dust baths really help them combat that. You will of course need nest boxes for the coop, and deciding how many and where to put them is dependent on the breed you choose to work with. For me, my Crevecoeurs are non-setting or non-broody chickens. They lay their eggs and then walk away with no intention to sit on them. They also like to lay on the ground, so all of my nest boxes are on the ground. I have about one for every 8 to 10 hens because they all want to lay in the same spot, hoping somebody else will do the hatching for them. On the other hand, when I had Buckeyes, the hens preferred the boxes a little bit off the ground, and some of them were very happy to sit and hatch chicks. So do research on the kind of bird you will be getting so you know how to make them happiest at laying time. Whether you have a mobile coop or a stationary coop, there are a few basics that you're going to need to have no matter what. First and foremost are perches. This is where the birds are going to sleep at night, and you want to make sure the perch fits the bird. So if you have young birds that are just out of the brooder, you want perches that are maybe about 2 inches wide, and as they get older and become adults, then that's going to go to 3 to 4 inches depending on how big your birds are. The best way is to have perches that have rounded edges and not sharp edges. Like if you've got a 2x2, maybe smooth out the corners so that they're a little more rounded. The thing you don't want to use is plastics or metals. That's really hard for the birds to grasp onto, and in particular metals in the wintertime can be problematic and actually cause frostbite on the toes. You also want them to be easily serviced. Here I have my perches are in joist hangers, and I can put the perches into the hangers, they fit in there snugly, and then when I want to clean the perches, they lift out really, really easily, and I can clean them well and put them back without making a big mess with disinfectant or cleanser inside the coop. I can take them outside and clean them. You also don't want to have the perches too high up off the ground, and this is particularly important for meat birds that are heavier. If you have perches that are higher than, say, 36 inches, that means the birds are going to be hitting the ground pretty hard when they jump off. And so the best thing is to keep the perches anywhere from like 24 to 36 inches off of the ground. That way it's less likely that the animals will hurt themselves. If they keep hitting that ground really hard over and over, they're going to develop bruises on their chest or leg problems, so you really want to try and avoid that. Make sure when you're setting up your perches that you leave plenty of space that is going to be available for food and water and nest boxes, so that when the birds are on the perches, they're not pooping all over those things. Sometimes you need to get a little bit creative, especially if you've got a small space within the coop. In the middle here, you can see this is my receptacle for oyster shell. It's long and skinny, and I can fit it in just about any corner in the coop, and it saves a lot of space. You could set up similar for your chicken feed, and that way you've optimized your space. Also in my coop I've got folding doors, because if the doors swing open, there's a whole bunch of space that's now being taken up by the door where I can't put a nest box or I can't put perching or feeders, and having this bifold door actually works really, really well for me and maximizes my space so that I'm able to have more possibilities where I can put feeders and waterers. Pretty much every predator on the planet is interested in eating chickens or their eggs, and so there are some simple things you can do to help protect your birds. One of the most challenging predators for us is snakes. We have very large black snakes in the area, and although we like to have them around to help with keeping rodents down, it's not so fun when they're eating my chicken eggs or even trying to eat the chicks. So if I have young chicks that are in the coop, then I protect the coop by covering all of the doors and windows with hardware cloth, which is a fine mesh that's either a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch square. And then every nook and cranny that I think the snake can get into, I might fill with stuff like this great stuff foam, where you spray it in and the foam hardens. You have to be careful that the birds can't reach that stuff because you don't want them poking at it or eating it. You may choose to fill in those gaps with steel wool or something else that, you know, you might not want to use this. But the thing is, you need to have a tight coop so that the snakes can't get in. Raptors are another big challenge we face, and if you're in a wide open area and you don't have a lot of trees around the coop, the easiest thing is to just buy some cheap plastic mesh and put that on top of the coops and you're all set. We don't have that luxury because we have a lot of trees on the property, and in the fall having mesh over the coops is going to be really problematic and a nightmare trying to keep the leaves off of that. The simple solution that we came up with is stringing wire across the coop in 6-inch intervals, and that way the raptors, when they look at it, they really won't challenge it because they know they can't fly through it and it's going to be really hard for them to fly out. Also, the perimeter of our coops are 8 feet tall, and so they're not really going to be able to easily jump through those wires and jump back out. They're not stupid, and they've not challenged it in the 10 years that we've had this setup. Finally, for four-legged predators, there are a couple things that you can do to protect your birds from them. One, you want to make sure that they have a harder time digging underneath your perimeter, and you can do that with buried mesh, or we happen to have a bunch of used telephone poles hanging around, and so we put those along the perimeter. Also, if you really want to be extra sure, string a strand of hot wire around your coop. That way the animal's going to hit that hot wire and think twice about doing anything more to your birds. Everyone's heard the term pecking order, and that's because chickens spend a lot of time trying to figure out who's boss in the flock. And that's because they're either overcrowded or they're just simply bored. So there are simple things that you can do to really alleviate that problem. One that I find is very effective is I'll get some straw and spread it out in the yard, and then sprinkle goodies in there like a little bit of cracked corn as a snack or some fruit or veggies, and they'll spend all day poking through that hay and keeping busy and being distracted from trying to pick on each other. Another way to keep the peace is basically to get the animals out of each other's sight, and that can be as simple as hanging some burlap in the coop, or you can get a little more creative with the birds on the left hand side and the bottom. You can see they're perching on top of a couple of pallets, and I've stood the pallets up almost like a teepee and secured them so that they can't fall down. And the great thing is that the birds can go on top to get away from another bird, or they can go underneath it or around it, and the birds really love that cage furniture as a way to get away from each other. So be creative and it'll help to keep the peace. Good food and water is going to be essential to the overall health of your flock, and it's really important that they have plenty of water at all times, especially if you have a high volume laying flock, because those birds are going to need a lot of water to lay those eggs. You also want to have the food and water receptacles up off the ground because they're going to stay cleaner that way and less likely to have pests get into them. The nutritional needs of your chickens is going to change over the course of its lifetime, and the starter diet you begin with has a much higher level of protein than the feed that you'd be giving your adult birds. Typically, you begin with starter diet, and then you transition around 8 weeks of age to a grower diet, and then by the time they're becoming adults and ready to start laying, you're going to convert to a layer diet, which is an even lower protein. So make sure you've got the appropriate diet for your birds. I also like to give a little boost to my newly hatched chicks or chicks that have just been shipped by adding some probiotics and electrolyte into their water for the first few days. This is a choice, it's not a necessity, but I find that for particularly delicate breeds, this can actually help your survivability with your chicks. You also want to make sure that your birds have access to grit. And grit is basically small pieces of stone, typically granite, and they're used basically like teeth for the chicken. It helps them to grind up their food. And you'll find that a lot of times they eat it like candy. You want to make sure that you offer it to your chicks in the brooder, and it should be starter grit with smaller particulates, and then you'll eventually go to the adult grit once they reach adult age. But this is really important. It helps them to process their food more efficiently. You can add apple cider vinegar to your bird's water as well at around 2 to 4 tablespoons per gallon. This helps to reduce any algae buildup, and also it's really great during weather extremes. If it's very hot or very cold, it helps the birds to deal with the extremes by giving them a little boost for their metabolism. And of course your birds are going to really appreciate some of the leavings from the garden or kitchen scraps. Here we have some fresh beet greens that the birds absolutely love. Some of the produce that might be borderline going bad, soft tomatoes or things like that. The birds love that kind of stuff. The thing is, don't overdo it, and also make sure you're aware of the do's and don'ts of what you can feed your birds. You certainly don't want to introduce those novel items until the birds are a little bit older. It's not a good idea to give those kind of things to young chicks. Something a lot of people forget about is, what do you do if you need to move your birds, or if your birds get out and you need to catch them? It's really useful to have dog crates around, but if you're going to be moving a large number of birds, you might think about investing in a poultry crate like the one on the right. That can typically fit 6 to 10 chickens, and you can easily transport them, and they're not very expensive. Also, if your birds get out, it's pretty hard to chase down a chicken, and so things like a catch net or poultry hook can make life a lot easier. The great thing about the poultry hook is they're fairly long, they're about 4 feet long, and you don't need to get right on top of the bird to be able to snag a leg with the hook. It sounds terrible, but it's actually a lot less stressful than trying to chase a chicken around. So keep those in mind to make your life a little bit easier should the birds happen to get out. Once your birds start laying, be sure to have a basket handy so you can get the bounty back to the house in one piece. You also want to make sure you have plenty of egg cartons, and you can buy them for about 50 cents a piece, or you can always tap friends and family for their empties. To clean or not to clean is a dilemma for a lot of people. Some folks want to clean the eggs right away, and remember to always clean your eggs with warm water, not cold. If you use cold, that causes the pores of the eggs to rapidly close, and sometimes that traps bacteria in. If you choose not to clean eggs, then it might be helpful to have something around like this egg skelter on the right hand bottom of this slide. That helps you keep track of which eggs are the oldest. We typically don't like to leave eggs for more than a week. And remember that if you do clean your eggs, you're going to need to refrigerate them after they're cleaned. Whether you choose to wash your eggs or not, one thing's for certain: if you've got overly soiled eggs, just throw them away or compost them, but don't eat them. That way you're sure you've got the safest possible eggs for your family. That wraps it up for today's lesson. For more information on other programs of the Livestock Conservancy and North Carolina Cooperative Extension, please visit our websites. The Livestock Conservancy is a nonprofit that's been saving rare and endangered breeds for more than 43 years. Our small staff and large network of volunteer breeders stretches throughout America to identify and protect more than 150 breeds of poultry and livestock, and you can help us. Become a member of the Conservancy today and help make sure these irreplaceable genetic treasures are available for tomorrow's food and fiber system. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great day. And here's hoping the chicken projects you dream of come true. This program would not be possible without the support of our sponsors, including Tractor Supply Company and the Manton Foundation. Special thanks to Premier One for providing the Verado Tabletop Incubator, and to Hamilton Rare Breeds Foundation for the GQF Cabinet Incubator that we used to hatch the chicks for this program.